Tonight, the search is on for a group of serial burglars. Police say the thieves are behind as many as 40 burglaries, stealing thousands of dollars, and most of the targets have been laundromats. Eyewitness News.
So New York City's thieves have selected laundromats as their latest targets, and as you're about to see, this is a crime wave that's been bubbling under the surface for a long time. In fact, laundromat lootings have skyrocketed over the last 3 months, revealing that New York's soft-on-crime policies aren't just a problem for drugstores and department stores. They're now also a problem for the small, independent businesses that are barely scraping by.
The video shows a man in a mask robbing a Manhattan laundromat at gunpoint. Watch as the suspect pulls the gun out of his pocket, threatening a 31-year-old worker.
I can't believe people are so bold enough to do that.
Wow. The police are doing what they can, but there's more of them, more bad guys than there are good guys, unfortunately.
This laundromat on Grand Avenue is the most recent robbery. Police report a team of 3 or 4 masked men have been hitting laundromats all over the outer boroughs. A total of 40 laundromats broken into and robbed from March until June.
If it's an organized crew, then I'm pretty sure the cops, if they do their job, they'll find them.
The victim doesn't usually work the overnight shift, but offered to help out. She saw the customer in the laundromat and gave him free soap to wash his clothes. Moments later, he pulled a knife.
I really hope they get caught. And it's sad to hear that people have to come and rob. You know, it's just not right. It's not fair.
Police are now looking for the thieves who've robbed dozens of laundromats over the last few weeks. But what nobody's talking about is that this is just the latest twist in New York's ever devolving crime scene, which is exactly what happens when a city's laws protect criminals instead of locking them up. Now, the first victims of New York's progressive justice reforms were the obvious targets, and for months, shoplifters have been looting places like Macy's, Walgreens, and Lululemon every chance they get, stealing things they plan to resell at rock-bottom prices on websites like Amazon, or in the case of the non-computer savvy, out of a suitcase in front of the bus terminal in Midtown Manhattan. But now, those department stores and drugstores are locking down, and everything at Macy's is attached to the store itself with a wire and an alarm. And drugstores are now product penitentiaries with wall-to-wall plexiglass locking up everything just so it doesn't get stolen. And there is now an elevated police presence at many Lululemons in the city after one of those stores was raided for thousands of dollars worth of merchandise just a few weeks ago, which is why thieves are now targeting the tier of businesses below your chain stores and your drugstores, and those would be your little mom and pop shops like convenience stores and now laundromats. With convenience stores, thieves will go for the cash drawer and try to steal food items like ice cream or expensive energy drinks. But the problem with retail theft is that it's too complicated for some of our criminals who see their friends making a living reselling stolen items but just can't figure out how to do it for themselves. And that brings us to the real reason why we're now seeing thieves selecting laundromats as their latest target in the war on prosperity, shutting down small businesses that have existed for decades. And this reason is as sad as it is simple. Nobody in charge seems to care. But our leaders better start caring, because you know who uses laundromats? Average New Yorkers who live in apartments they can barely afford, who've watched the cost of crime jack up prices on clothing and food on top of the inflation eroding their standards of living. But the laundromat, it's an essential part of every single community, and if places like this shut down because of crimes like the one you're about to see, our leaders are gonna have some serious explaining to do. So here we have your typical New York City laundromat. We're in a residential area right now. There are tons of these all around because people that don't have apartments with laundry inside of them have to go somewhere to get their clothes cleaned. And these are the places where they need to do that multiple times a week, weekly, hopefully at least. But although for decades the 2,600 licensed laundromats in the city have been pretty much safe from the crime that has been taking over where we live, sadly that is no longer the case.
This family comes to Susan's Laundromat here in Elmhurst, Queens, every week. They were shocked to learn their local place had been broken into and robbed of $1,800 in cash. The ATM machine also swiped.
I think it's horrible. They really...
So this latest heist sees criminals break into a family-run laundromat and steal $1,800 plus whatever was in the ATM. Having an ATM in your property definitely makes it a target. ATM heists are their own thing, but that's the thing. These laundromats, these are old school businesses. They need an ATM, or some people can't load up their laundry cart or can't use any of the machines. On top of that, many of these places have been in business since the time when New York City used to lock up its criminals and we didn't have to worry about stuff like this. As stealing wasn't always seen as a nonviolent crime by our justice system that does not deserve any jail time crime or punishment if the amount is low enough. And as a result, these cleaners, these laundromats, a lot of them are still cash businesses. Even places that use a card and don't have you putting quarters in the machine, you still have to fill that card up with cash so that you can use it on all of the machines. But for the longest time, this hasn't been a problem. The owner takes the money that he gets from all of the laundry, empties it out of the machines, puts it in the ATM, uses it to pay his bills, and the cycle just repeats over and over again, and he takes a cut of the profits for himself to provide for himself or herself and their family. But if you take a closer look at some of these places, you'll notice that they're not all new and fancy and modern, and that's because the laundry business in a city with very high utility costs, including a new water tax on businesses, it's a very low margin business. And what you generally have here is not a get-rich-quick scheme, let's just put it that way. But being a low-margin business comes with other drawbacks as well. There may in fact be security cameras. Yes, that's always a good idea. But you are never going to have a security team monitoring the entrance of these places to see who comes in and comes out. And that's because places like this, they're making as much money today as they were yesterday. That's not really expected to change, and big investments that come along because of societal degradation just aren't really possible for them to stay open and do those investments.
This laundromat on Grand Avenue is the most recent robbery. Police report a team of 3 or 4 masked men have been hitting laundromats all over the outer boroughs. A total of 40 laundromats broken into and robbed from March until June.
That is an insane number of robberies, and it's all happening because there's cash inside these places. The criminals know that, and they know that it's there overnight, which is when these thieves have been striking, not during the middle of the day when they're open. And you know why there's such a heavy reliance on cash at little businesses like this? Well, that's because 3% credit card fees might not sound like a lot, but they could be. And that hit just isn't something every single owner of a laundromat is willing to accept. And if the internet's correct, most laundromats have around a $300,000 annual profit, depending on their size and location. Obviously, this will vary between businesses, but if the average sales at a place like this is around $300,000 and the average take-home pay from the owner is around a third of that, a 3% credit card fee applied to those sales numbers works out to about a $10,000 reduction from that number, which means the owner's taking a 10% pay cut of his $100,000 paycheck. And in a city where prices are going through the roof on pretty much everything from rent to groceries to utilities, the owner of a laundromat might not be able to accept a loss like that and still run his business. You know, he might just decide to retire. But the fact that these are unguarded businesses with low-level security and money inside is a big problem because criminals know that now. And when you consider that in 2019, the FBI figured out the average bank robbery netted around $1,800, you can't blame the criminals for going after a similar business where the payday is about equal and the risk is a lot less. Plus, there's another problem associated with robbing a bank instead of a laundromat. If you do that, it could be federally prosecuted, which means an entirely different justice system than the one we have here in New York, which is designed to protect criminals and not lock them up. You'll go to federal prison. You'll have to suffer from federal prosecution. But here, breaking into a laundromat, that's going to get handled locally. The charges may get downgraded. They may get dismissed. If you have a weapon or something with you, criminals risk a lot less by coming after these places, and the payday's the same.
Laundromats are an essential part of life in New York City where so many apartments don't have washers and dryers. Everyone needs clean clothes, and owners need to know their businesses are not sitting ducks.
So here's where we get to the rub with this type of crime. Anybody in New York City who's powerful enough to put a stop to it and dedicate resources to preventing it probably lives in a place where they don't have to go to a laundromat to do their laundry. This isn't the type of crime that affects them personally. And when those in charge of the populace don't use the same products and services the populace relies on, there is a disconnect. Yet every single person who uses one of these finds it absolutely reprehensible that they're being targeted by criminals. On top of that, 40 laundromats in 4 months. That's an epidemic, and it's showing no signs of slowing down. Nobody's been caught or arrested because everyone was wearing masks, and there are 0 leads. And remember, in New York, we've got so many people living in small apartments that laundromats are everywhere. There's 2,600 of them in total. That's a lot of potential targets for these thieves who have so far been getting away with all their crime. But alas, this emerging crime wave at laundromats reveals the scary truth about the position New York City has found itself in. Because what we're witnessing here is a crime wave that only exists because other types of crime are not punished. The thieves know they can escape. They know that the police force has one hand tied behind its back because we don't have enough resources to keep all of our stores and businesses safe at the exact same time. They've got a lot of targets, and they're going for them knowing that if they do get caught, the penalties will be minor. But sadly, there's a related crime wave taking place in our city at the exact same time, which just gets worse week after week after week. And just like the crime taking place at our laundromats, this crime wave too is another one that our leaders are unaffected by and have no interest in stopping. So over here, we have a bunch of little restaurants, and just like laundromats, they are everywhere in New York City, and just like laundromats, they are a low-risk target where criminals can earn more than they would earn if they were to rob a bank. But unfortunately, the similarities don't stop there, as we've now got an epidemic of crime targeting people eating at these places, which is something that our leaders also will never experience.
A group of thieves are targeting people with high-end jewelry and accessories all over the city. I've seen this story all over social media for months now, and they say that the thieves have stolen already nearly $300,000 worth of items. That's according to police. This morning, new images and videos of these robberies were released.
So look at that. In the exact same time frame as the laundromat lootings over the last 4 months, $300,000 worth of personal property has been stolen from people at restaurants just like this one. And you've got to ask yourself, our district attorney or our mayor, are they ever going to be at a restaurant that gets targeted by thieves and have the watches stolen off their wrists? Of course not. They've got security, they're well-protected individuals. And Mayor Adams is on record saying that we need more police, saying that we need more recruits to increase the overall size of our force, but nobody else in charge seems to care. And just like the laundromat robberies, nobody cares if people at a restaurant get robbed, except the criminals if their moped were to break down while they're trying to make their escape.
In that incident, the suspects threatened them with a gun, stole 2 watches. The 4th incident happened June 18th in Greenwich Village.
Now, the 5th time also happened in Williamsburg. This was on June 21st. In that robbery, the suspects stole iPhones and watches from 3 victims who were eating.
So it looks like every 3 to 4 weeks, another restaurant, either the outdoor component or the indoor component, gets targeted by thieves. And you know who these thieves are looking for? They're looking for men who have fancy jewelry. And recent reports indicate $60,000 to $100,000 wristwatches are getting ripped right off people's wrists. And these crimes are probably premeditated, with the victims being intentionally targeted by the crooks, because we don't have any reports of people being robbed at gunpoint for their Timex. No. And look at how easy this is. You've got the restaurant front door right here, and then you've got the bike lane. People could just pull up in their little moped. One of them who's riding the moped waits on the bike. The other guy, the one who's going to do the robbing, gets off, sticks everybody up, has them throw all their valuables in a knapsack, and then they're gone. But the way these operations likely work is you have criminals working in teams. You've got the getaway driver, the robber, but you've probably also got somebody else looking around for potential targets. And this could be virtually anybody. It could be somebody who's able to see where you're sitting from the street, or it could be one of the host or hostesses who work at the expensive restaurant that you're dining at.
Every incident, police say the suspects left the scene on a 2-wheel vehicle, like a moped or some sort of motorized scooter. Right now, police say they are looking for 2 men, along with a woman, who is believed to have acted as a lookout.
That's scary to see.
It is real.
So here we have confirmation that lookouts are involved and that these are teams of criminals, but there's a connection between these crimes and the laundromat crimes that goes beyond what leaders of ours may or may not be personally affected by crimes like this. And that connection is the fact that both of these crimes are happening because of late-stage criminal intervention by our justice system. And what's fascinating about that is we always hear about the concept of early intervention and how early intervention is very good when it comes to things like societal problems, when it comes to things like cancer, when it comes to things like any kind of deviant behavior. The earlier you get after it, the sooner you can stop it, and the sooner you can turn that person around before their life gets really bad. But that's the opposite of how our criminal justice system here works. For example, in New York, not only do we have laws that mandate many criminals do not get held on bail after they do something terrible, oftentimes those criminals are prosecuted in a way that minimizes what they've done, where progressive district attorneys drop charges or downgrade them from felonies to misdemeanors, which don't result in anybody getting locked up. And a fantastic example of this is gun-related crime. You ever wonder why New York has such tough gun laws, but we keep hearing about so much gun crime in our city? Well, there's a 3.5-year minimum sentence if you are convicted of having an unlicensed firearm. But a lot of times when a crime is brought and a district attorney is supposed to prosecute that crime, the gun charges can get dropped because, oh, there might not have been enough proof. And when you combine prosecutors who are asking for light sentences with laws that mandate light sentences, man, you've got a recipe for criminals to repeat the same crimes they've been arrested for. Which is why we've got so much shoplifting in this city. It's a misdemeanor if you steal under $1,000 worth of stuff, even if it's not your first offense. And many criminals who are caught committing much more serious offenses have rap sheets that include multiple instances of retail theft, which they were never taken off the streets for. Now, does that mean every single criminal in New York who steals something from Walgreens is going to grow up to be a laundromat looter or a restaurant robber? Not necessarily, but it does mean that these criminals are being allowed to develop a pattern of deviant behavior that goes unchecked and is not subject to early intervention. And think about this, if somebody steals things over and over and over again, even if they get arrested a few times, if they're never put in jail, it's always just a misdemeanor, they never suffer any real consequences, eventually they're going to get very good at not only stealing things, but evading law enforcement, figuring out how to set things up, stake out targets, commit crimes, and then they may be tempted to go to the next level. And what we essentially have here is late stage justice, where the only way anybody faces any real consequences for doing something is once they do something that is very bad and very egregious, possibly harming another person in a way that is irreversible. That's a bad system, which is why it's so frightening to now look at these unstoppable crime waves that we have targeting small family businesses like laundromats and restaurants. This is absolutely terrible, and it doesn't really look like there's any way to stop it because it's so big and the police force we have is so small and our laws do so little to deter any of this type of crime. It may go on forever until there are no more targets left. Is that what's happening? What do you think New York City should do to protect laundromats and places that the communities here really rely on? And what about all of this restaurant thievery? People just ripping the watches right off people's arms. Why hasn't anybody been caught? What do you think's going on? Let me know. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.